That's why in the book of James, it says it's arrogant of us to say, I'm going to do this next year. He goes, you don't even know if you have tomorrow. Your life is a vapor. I had a friend who was at a funeral. He was a businessman, and it was his secretary's husband who died. And so he's at the memorial service, and he begins speaking. And he realizes, this is my opportunity to tell people about Jesus. It was my friend, Stan Gerlach. And Stan, he looked at the crowd. People were telling me, he looked at the crowd at one point, and he said to them, you never know the moment when God will take your life. And at that moment, there's nothing you can do about it. Are you ready? And he was just sharing, he says, are you ready to see that God? Because we are all going to face him any moment. It'll be the most terrifying moment of our lives. We are going to see him. And so he's preaching to this group of people at a funeral. And then he says it again. He says, you never know when God is going to take your life. And at that moment, there's nothing you can do about it. Are you ready? Then after he shared, he sits down and falls over and dies. In the middle of a funeral. You know, when the paramedics came, they tried to bring him back to life. But I remember getting a call in my office, and someone told me the story. I'm like, what? Because it had just happened. So I went over to their house, and they were just getting back from the funeral, and his wife comes out of the car, and she's just sobbing, saying, my husband, he's gone. Then her son's big guy, John, comes up, and he's crying. He comes up to me, he goes, did you hear about my dad? And I said, yeah, I heard the story. And he looked at me, and he goes, I'm so proud of my dad. He goes, my dad died doing what he loved doing most. He was telling people about Jesus. And then he goes into the house. All these family members rush into the house, and they are just crying because they can't believe what they just saw. And so when I walk in the house, they look at me and go, Francis, would you say something to us? And I remember at that moment, the first verse that came to my mind was Matthew 10. In verse 32, what Jesus says is, everyone who will confess me before men, I will confess him before the Father in heaven. But if you deny me on earth before men, I will deny you before my Father in heaven. And as everyone's crying, I'm saying, you guys, you know what this verse is saying? He says, if we will speak up for Christ on this earth, then one day when we see God, Jesus will actually speak up for us and confess us. But if we deny him, he'll deny us. And I said, you guys, can you imagine? I go, try to imagine what it was like for Stan Gerlach today. Think about it. 1 second, he is on the earth looking at a crowd of people, and he is saying, this is who Jesus Christ is. 1 second later, he's standing before God, and Jesus is going, Father, this is who Stan Gerlach is. I go, he had Jesus confessing him before the Father. What did that feel like? And I remember leaving that day going, oh man, I want to die like that. You know, like I'll probably say something stupid and then die. But the last words of his mouth being the gospel. And then he stands before a holy God.